Hello.
Well, hello, Claire. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Welcome to Islington Reads. So I'm Sarah.
Hi, Sarah.
I'm part of the team, and then Maya's next, and then we have Beth, and then there's Anne, who's not yet joined us, but we're very excited to have you tonight. So thank you.
Oh my goodness.
for
Thank you so much for
coming in.
having me. Yeah, it's really great.
Going to be good fun. So, and we do try to keep this pretty strict. Maya, are you going to do a quick recap at all, or do you want me to go through the housekeeping stuff at the beginning?
You have the note, like you usually have the notes about how we treat each other. Yeah. So I'll just welcome everybody and we'll go from there. Sounds good. Okay.
Perfect.
Claire, we loved your book. We can't wait to talk to you about it.
Oh my God. Thank you.
So beautiful and heart-wrenching. And I just want you to know how well cared for and held it was.
So much. That means so much to me.
You're welcome so much.
So Claire, I'm not sure how much Norm said to you about how the evening progresses. Did he give you a rundown at all?
Not really.
Not really.
You tell me.
Okay, so we'll do a little housekeeping at the beginning, and then I will do a quick introduction of you. Now, the one question I did have, Norm wasn't able to answer is, do you have any siblings? Are you an only child?
No.
You're an only child.
I am.
Okay. All right. Super. So if you're all right, if I put that in my little intro.
Of course.
Okay.
Yes.
Super. And then we'll open up the floor to you to speak for 15-20 minutes about whatever you'd like. Probably about
the pressure.
The pressure. Exactly.
Don't be stressed.
And then we've got lots and lots and lots of questions to get through. I mean, obviously, if some get answered throughout our little chat, then they go down. But
right.
And then if we run out of questions and we still have extra time, then we'll open it up to the floor. So what we do is we mute everybody and we stop the chat on the side, just so that people can absolutely focus on you and what you have to say. So okay. And then thank yous. And then after at 8 o'clock, once we're done, there are breakout groups afterwards for anybody who wants to stay. That you're not expected to stay. You're 7 to 8, but if you felt like staying and chatting more, you're welcome to do so. So
lovely.
And Claire, just at the beginning, I'll probably mute everyone. That means you need to unmute after, and Sarah, you too, once, because I don't have the power to unmute you, but I do have the power to mute everyone else, and you'll be careful about that. So people are starting to come in. So if people will be notified that it's being recorded, and we'll edit this part out before we put it up on the web. So there are lots of people who have bought the book and read it and just couldn't be here live, but that will listen later. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's invite everybody in.
I've never made it before, so.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Just invite you to find yourself here, wherever here is.
We're both there. Ready?
You mind? Where's Rick saying?
Wonder how your day has been. I wonder if you've adjusted from moving from spring to summer to winter all quickly. Lets us have a bit more time if you hadn't finished your book to finish that today. They're coming in fast and furious. There's Marilyn. Good to see you.
Hi.
Hi. Hi, Donna. You can keep your
Hello.
camera on or off. Just be comfortable.
Hi, Marilyn. It's Catherine Ireland.
Oh, hi, Catherine.
Look at that.
It's been eons.
Great
Wow.
to see you.
Great to see you too.
How books connect us, Catherine.
Yeah.
How long ago would that have been? My goodness.
Thank you, dear.
I retired in 2012 for the first time, and then I supplied. So you retired when?
I'm trying to remember. A long time ago. I can't even remember what year it was.
Maybe 2000 and something,
Healthy.
2005,
I was going to say 2006.
maybe.
Yeah. It's a long time ago anyway.
Yes.
Lynn, did you find your bag of gold?
I didn't even look yet, Val.
Oh, and I'm sitting
do
here,
that.
I'm sitting here with the light and with my church magnet. Did you know that if you want to know whether your jewelry's real gold or real silver, you use a church name tag magnet? And if it sticks like that, like this pin to the, it means it's not gold or silver.
Wow.
Oh,
So that's a little trick that Jane Turner taught me at the rummage sale years ago.
well, thank you for that.
Well,
Doesn't mean that if it doesn't stick, it is real gold or silver. It's just a way of ruling out a basic scan.
Well, I wouldn't probably have any of those. I mean, mine will be all the real stuff.
Of course.
well, Claire, Val is talking. She's an avid reader, but also a fundraiser for our church, and they're having a little gold party where people dig around in their closet and find gold they don't want, and some money goes to them and some.
Wow.
So,
Want me to rub the bath? I don't have my bath or what?
oh,
No, have my bath first.
Okay, this
Claire, can I ask you a question before we get started? In your publicity picture, is that snow on your hair?
Yes. Let's hope it's snow and not dandruff.
No, I thought maybe you just had a snowball fight with somebody.
me.
Or it could be my Morticia
I love it.
angel kisses, my husband puts it,
Yeah,
which is a
that's-
very lovely reframe for my
That
graying
is
hair.
lovely. I love that.
Catherine
Yes,
would have been 96.
in
Oh, there's-
1996. My goodness.
Good job, Marilyn. Good look at good remembering.
Yep. Great recall. Well, it was great reconnecting, and then I passed on Marilyn's move and everything to some of our other friends. So we had a great reconnect.
Yes. That was not too long ago.
No,
Yeah, that's right.
maybe in the fall.
I've had quite a few of those along the way, sort of one leads to another.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't want to be on camera. Do you mind?
Not-
Government announcing Tuesday is making changes to legislation that would allow the project to move forward as soon as
Someone's
possible.
got their TV on. Hopefully you-
Here, Daria Zargar, Global News. Speaking on the Hill benefit, so here on PKNW. Treasury Board President Mona Forte.
So friends, I've muted everybody, but now Sarah's unmuted. My name is Reverend Maya. I welcome you to Islington Reads. It's my privilege to hold in my hand Claire's novel and be grateful for the time I've spent with it. We're looking forward to meeting her. And for those of you who love Sarah and know we're grateful in this closing week of the novel spot that she's offering leadership here tonight we're excited. We know there will be more chapters to come. So stay tuned, but I'm going to turn it over to Sarah. You are being recorded. I've muted everyone. But you can also post in the chat if you need anything. And then when we turn it over to Claire, we'll stop the chat and I'll open it back up at the end. Sarah will add all that. So I'm going to turn it over to her. Just have to highlight her. She was right here. Where did she go? There she is. Hey, Sarah, over to you.
All right, wonderful. Well, welcome everybody for taking time out on your Tuesday evening. I know there's a big Toronto Maple Leafs game tonight, so I'm sure there may be some hockey fans in the group as well, cheering on the Toronto Maple Leafs in their run for, hopefully the Stanley Cup this year. Who knows? Anyway, thank you for taking your time out today to join us. As you know, all the people that have come to all of our previous ones, and I know there's some very familiar faces out there, and there's some that I haven't seen before. So welcome everyone to Islington Reads. Islington Reads is a community book club, and it's a partnership between Islington United Church and a Novel Spot Bookshop. And we started this during the pandemic, and it's been wonderful to have it continue on for many months since that fateful day that COVID hit. Anyway, tonight we have got Clare Ross Dunn, and she will be discussing our book At Last Count. And you can see all the stickies I've got all over this book. So there are just so many amazing themes and points of discussion in this book. So it's going to be fabulous to have the time and get Clare's expertise from the author's point of view on writing this book. And as everyone knows, what we do, we mute, everyone's muted. We have disabled the chat on the side so everyone can pay attention. All the questions that are being asked tonight were pre-submitted. So hopefully, if you wanted your question asked, we've got them in the pile here. If we get through all those questions, then we will open up the chat so that extra questions can come in at that time. I'd also like to, at this point in time, to thank Invisible Publishing, the publisher of Clare's book. And in particular, I'd like to thank Norm. He is head publisher of Invisible Publishing, and he is just an absolute fantastic young man. And he has an eye for finding and bringing great books to print and in the format. So this was one of Norm's first books as head publisher to come out. So it's very exciting for Norm and for us and for Clare. I think that covers off sort of the basics or the housekeeping that's required for this evening. But now I'm going to give a little bit of an introduction to Clare, and I mean, Clare can expand on it. There's not a lot on the internet, but do know that Clare's first career or first job was she was an actor, and she had various different acting roles. And then from there, she went on to become a writer, a story editor, a producer, and she has written for movies. In particular, she has written for Little Mosque on the Prairie, which was a very, very popular show, and I do believe it still gets many views still today. She also worked on Degrassi Next Generation, and she actually got to work with Drake before Drake became famous and became Drake. So all sorts of exciting things. And then she's done a lot of screenwriting, but this At Last Count is her first novel. So it'll be interesting to hear from you, Clare, a little bit about the difference between screenwriting and actually writing a novel. And just another little side that I found out is At Last Count has also been given some funding so that it is actually going to come onto the screen. So I'm assuming, Clare, that's going to be something you'll be working on as well. Clare was born and raised and still lives in Toronto. So she's a Torontonian through and through. She's married to a gentleman named Kirk Dunn. And I hear that he is the knitting pilgrim, and he has done some amazing knitting projects. And Norm said he may even actually pop in. But one thing that Norm told me about is he actually likes to knit stained glass windows. So it would be nice to hear a little bit about that from you too, Clare. They also have 2 children. Clare herself is an only child, which I wanted to find out because, having read about Paisley, I kind of got the sense that Clare was an only child, the way she wrote Paisley so well. So it's kind of nice to get that clarified, that, yeah, or not clarified, confirmed that Clare is also an only child. And the other thing is Clare has OCD, and she has written that from the heart. So again, that is one of the themes. I know got a lot of questions that have come through, but just thank you for writing this amazing book and putting your heart on your sleeve. And I've not met anybody with OCD. So it was really interesting to be inside this book with Paisley and her struggles. And it's wonderful that you've brought it to attention in this book, along with, all the birding stuff that's out there. And again, I know you were very nervous about writing about the birding aspects of it because you yourself are not a birder. I'm sure you're going to fill us in a little bit more about becoming a birder, because I can't imagine you not being a birder after writing this book. So again, with OCD, mental health, also the whole bullying aspect that goes on, just again, upbringing. And for me, one of the themes is eviction. And that's what the store is facing right now with that First Capital at Humbertown. So that was a theme that really struck a chord with me, and how it gets very intense when you're going to have to be leaving your home, and the struggles it can cause. So anyway, got lots of great themes. We've got lots of fun stuff to talk about, some great questions to come. But right now, I will pass the floor over to Clare, and she'll talk a little bit about the book, about herself, whatever she wants to. I basically said she can talk about whatever she wants. And then once she's had enough of chatting about herself, we'll dive into the questions. So without further ado, welcome Clare to Islington Reads.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It's lovely to be here. I'm so excited to talk to everybody. Everything you said about me was correct, except I was born in Montreal, but that's it. I've lived here in Toronto since I was 2. So I will meander a bit in talking about my experience writing this book, and I look forward to then, answering questions and having conversation about all of these things. I have written for television for about over 25 years, I think, probably closer to 27. And but secretly always wanted to publish a book. Of course, every writer does. And my experience with this book was that I started writing it in I joined a writer's circle with a couple of friends in 2005 as a way to get back in touch with enjoying writing rather than the stress of it, because television is quite a stressful business, and there's a lot of pressure and a lot of time pressure and a lot of people giving you notes. And so I got together with these 2 friends, and we decided that we would just write for pleasure. And then there was a deadline coming up with one of the arts councils, the Toronto Arts Council, and we challenged each other to submit to this arts council. And I was working on a short story about Paisley. And in fact, it started out as an ode to Britnell's. I don't know if people here remember Britnell's bookstore, but it was this wonderful bookstore at Bloor and Young. And in fact, now only has one tiny scene in the book. So, but that was the kind of origin story of At Last Count. And so I submitted this short story and said I was going to develop it into a novel, although I had no idea how I was going to do that. And I got that Toronto Arts Council grant. And then my 2 friends said, oh, well, now you have to submit to the Ontario Arts Council as well. And so I did that, and I got that grant too, which I understand is very rare to get both of those literature grants. And then I had a complete meltdown because I realized I had to write a book, and I had no idea how to do that. So I contacted the Humber School for Writers, which has become a much lauded, wonderful school for writing. And I wrote to the info at, so just like the general mailbox, and said, I've got these 2 grants. I don't know how to write a novel. I wonder if I can sign up for the correspondence program, which essentially happens over 6 or 9 months. And you write either 90,000 words or you get to the 6-month end, whichever comes first, and you're assigned an editor, and you deliver every 2 weeks. It's that kind of format. And the head of the program wrote me back, and he said, well, you've passed the deadline. You've missed the deadline entirely. But send me 20 pages of your writing and I'll see if I like it. And so I did that. And then he said, okay, I like this writing, so I'm going to take you on myself. Then I had another meltdown because now is delivering to the head of the Humber School for Writers. Anyway, I developed the book with him, with Antana Salika, who was the head of the Humber School for Writers. I got to the end of my first draft. I knew that there was still work to do, so I re-registered. This was actually during the time that I was writing for Little Mosque on the Prairie. And so I was working on that show for months at a stretch. And then I would have a few months off while we waited to see if we got another season. And so I continued writing the book with a new editor. And then after that, I knew that I needed to work on some structure things. And so I hired an editor, a freelance editor, and we worked together and we got the book to he was the one, his name is Nathan Whitlock, and he's a wonderful novelist in Toronto, and also works at Humber in the publishing department. And he was the one who encouraged me to start the book again and tell it in this format of now and then. So I have Nathan to blame or thank for that. A lot of people have assumed that it was my screenwriting background that led to that kind of intercutting style, but it was Nathan's suggestion to intercut between Paisley at 13 and 39. And so I was a bit grumpy at the time about having to do a page one rewrite, but I did that work with Nathan. He felt it was ready to send to publishers. I sent it out to 3 publishers. All of them read the book and had lovely things to say, but it wasn't right for them at the time. And around that moment, I had a realization. I was feeling intense fear about sending out the book. And when they all said no, thank you, I felt immense relief, and I shoved the book in a drawer. And I realized that I had been writing about my experience with OCD as a child. And I know it sounds ridiculous, but I had not really figured that out until then. I was writing this, the book is entirely fictional, but it comes from this true place of having struggled with OCD when I was young. I would say I'm mostly recovered at this point in my life, in my late 50s. But I think, you know, we can talk more about OCD, but some of those thought patterns never really go away, but I am high functioning and, you know, all of that sort of stuff. But at the time I thought to myself, I don't want anybody to find out that I have struggled with OCD. And so I was relieved not to have the book picked up. And the book sat in a drawer for 8 years. And I didn't do anything with it. And then COVID struck. And I don't know if people remember that moment in the early weeks of COVID. This was prior to there being a vaccine. This was prior to, everybody was on lockdown. I stood on my front porch. There was not a soul in the street. And the film and TV business had shut down all around the globe. And I said to my husband, I have no idea what I'm going, how I'm going to earn a living, and B, what I should be doing with this moment. Things felt very tenuous and dangerous, really. It felt like you could catch it and go into hospital and never come out. And so Kirk and I had lots of conversations about what I should be doing, what we should be doing. And the Canada Council came out with a digital pivot grant. They had a flat $5,000 that they would give to artists of any stripe to do something during the pandemic and do a digital version of it. So you could be a dancer and have a dance show and record it and put it on the internet, et cetera. And I thought, you know, maybe the only thing I could think of that I could actually do with $5,000 was record an audiobook. So I thought, well, maybe I'll reread the book. I haven't looked at it in 8 years, and I'll see whether I like it. And so I did, and I thought that's a pretty good book. I think, I didn't mind it, is what I'll say. And so I re-interviewed a few editors because I felt like the book needed a good go through to make sure that it made sense. And I submitted this grant to the Canada Council. And I found a wonderful editor. His name is Alex Schultz. And he said, I'd absolutely be happy to edit this book. And you should know two things about me. One is I am standing on my back deck and I can see Amherst Island from my back deck. I just thought that was like a shocking coincidence. He lives in Prince Edward County. And the second thing he said was also, I was a card-carrying ornithologist at the age of 13 in Ireland. And so I said, you're hired, because I couldn't believe that the confluence of these two things. He was just the perfect person to edit the book. And he got to page 150 and he called me on the phone and he said, I love your book and I would like to submit it to a publisher I am familiar with. And I said, well, first of all, that's lovely. And second of all, I think you should definitely finish the book in case everything falls apart at the back end. He said, I don't think it's going to happen, but yes, I will do that. And then he finished the book and he said, yes, I still love it. And I would like to submit it. And it turned out that it was invisible. And they took the book. And just before he did that, he said, now I need to ask you a question. And I knew this was going to be the question. And he said, I need to ask about your experience with OCD because, voice appropriation is a really important thing. And authenticity of voice is a really important thing. And so I had to tell him, yes, that's me. That, even though the book is entirely fictional, Paisley's experience in internal life was my internal life as a kid growing up in the 70s and 80s. And my knees actually shook while I told him that. Oh boy. But I got through it. And then when I spoke to Invisible, at the time it was Lee Nash who was the publisher there, and then Norm took over from her after they took on my book. I told her about that experience too, and my knees shook a little less, I would say. And so it's been an incredible experience for me to talk about OCD and own that and be out about it. I've had amazing response from readers who, some of whom had never had any experience with OCD, and so were kind of interested to experience that through reading the book. And others who have come to me at author signings and have said, that was my story. You described it so well, and nobody else has described it like that. So I guess that is my story. Yeah, we could talk a bit about OCD. We could talk about all kinds of things, but anyway, that's the long version of how
that's how the book came to be. Well, what an exciting story. I mean, it's amazing how you hear stories about how long it takes a book to come to be, but it's, they have a right time. And obviously when the pandemic hit, that was the right time for, I guess we all had to encounter different fears during the pandemic, and you got over a big one, but it's absolutely wonderful. So thank you. I think it's interesting that it was an editor that suggested that maybe you do the then and now, because that was one of the questions that came up that came through, was how did you decide to do the then and the now? So were there other elements of your book that sort of that were taken out and then put in? I know you said Britnell's played a larger role, then it doesn't play a role. Did birding take on a bigger role after you dealt with your editor, who is a card-carrying ornithologist? Did he think you needed to expand on that part of the story?
So the now and then, as I said, the first major structural pass happened with Nathan Whitlock, who was my first freelance editor. And then when I started working, and then I worked with Alex Schultz. And then, once a publisher says yes, I naively thought, oh, that's it. We're done. that's completely wrong. You get taken on by a publisher, and then there's a whole other kind of 1.5-year process that happens working towards the actual release date. And Lee Nash became the last editor on the book. And she was the one who said, I really like this now and then, and I think you should do it much more frequently. When I started it, it just went chapter to chapter. And so it was like 30-page chunks. And she said, I would like to see what happens if you intercut much more frequently. And I suspect that it will raise the stakes. And I feel like she was really right. And that was quite a like save as, you click and you go save as, and you start from the beginning. And I had index cards and I had all kinds of things going, because really what it meant was that I had to find the hook moment.
That's right. Natural breaks in the story for the then and the now. Well, it works brilliantly. And for someone who reads a ton of books, it really it flowed beautifully. So
oh, great. I'm so glad.
It was great. So
yeah, so that was the most that was the biggest structural change, I would say. The book, the birding, so Amherst Island is a very important birding area. It's got a special designation of some kind. I can't remember what the official title is, but it's got 2 reserves on the island. It's not a very big island, run by the Kingston Field Naturalists. And so it made sense when I was looking for when I was building Paisley's character, it made sense to give her birding, partly because it resonated on the counting. So, number 8 was my big number. So it was Paisley's big number too. But it in a way, it gave a positive spin to the counting notion, that Paisley would have something positive to do with her counting and her desire to make lists and get things just right and tick birds off and whatnot. So that groundwork was already laid. And then it was Lee who said to me, and as you said, it had everything to do with the book finding its time. Lee said, when I read your book, it made me think about the problem of eviction and the problem of finding a home that's right for you. And the way it resonates, obviously, during COVID is, people were looking to get out of Toronto, where they are in very close quarters with others, and looking for more space. But the double problem was, can you afford it? And the whole issue of affordability and landlords taking advantage of people. And so it's always so interesting when you get exposed to a new partner in your writing, and they see something completely different that you haven't really even thought about. And so when I did the last pass with Lee, after she had chosen to publish the book, I thought very deeply about the migration of Paisley from Toronto to Amherst Island. And that, of course, resonated on birds too, right? So it enabled me to sort of lay in a whole other thread through the book, which was Paisley as this bird, and relating Paisley to the personality of a Henslow sparrow, and also the migration patterns that birds have and how they figure out where they're supposed to go. And it gave her somebody to, she has no idea where she's supposed to go, but birds seem to know this intuitively. And so that became a major piece of the last draft of the book.
Okay. Now, during the pandemic, did you go to Amherst Island did you leave the city and go there and do some of your writing there? Because I know you're not from Amherst, but your husband's family, and you've gone there with your family over summers with the kids.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Like that. But did you make the escape from Toronto when the pandemic hit?
No, we didn't. Although years and years ago, we looked at a tiny house on Amherst Island, and oh, how I wish we'd bought it back then. But no, all of that work happened in the first 1.5 years of the pandemic, when people weren't going anywhere. And there might have been a pocket. You remember that things would lighten up and we'd think, oh, we're through this. and people would take their masks off, and then there would be another wave. But I had written so much of the original book on our weekends and holidays at Amherst Island. You know, being at the garden party, which of course is the summer social in my book, and just all the feelings and experiences of my kids jumping off the ferry dock and tromping through people's farms, and one of the last stages of publishing a book is getting sensitivity readers or fact checkers to read your material. And so I had 3, actually. I had one fellow, Paul McKenzie, who lives in Kingston and is a member of the Kingston Field Naturalists. And he read purely for birding references, because I said to him, I cannot get this wrong. Birders are very, very concerned with all the facts, and you have to make sure that I get nothing wrong. And then the other 2 women who read for Amherst Island things, Jill and Lori Cawhey, are part of there's a whole clan of Cawheys on Amherst Island, and we're old friends. And, you know, it was their barn that I was thinking of when I was writing that barn. And it was, so they checked all the milk parlor things and all the farm processes so I was just basing things on memory. And they were saying, no, Claire, that's, you know, that detail is wrong. You need, the cows don't do that or whatever.
Okay. And then going back a little bit to the birding side of things, were you worried about, I mean, obviously you had a fact checker for the birds, but during the pandemic, birding became a huge thing. I mean, a lot of people got very fascinated and had the time to watch the birds migrating through and in their backyards and everything else. So it's kind of interesting. Were you, again, I guess there was a bit of a worry about,
well, yeah,
I mean, the timing of it is interesting, because like not a lot of people write books with a very bird focus to them. And
right.
This book has one. It just happened to coincide with the time with the pandemic and people taking on.
I wish I wish I could say all of that was planned, but it wasn't at all. Yeah, I mean, I would still claim not to be a birder, because I don't want anybody to think that I am a better birder than I am. But I can recognize a few out my window now that I didn't know about before. And the internet is a wonderful resource. You know, there's so much that you can read. You can listen to their songs on the internet. You can watch videos of how the bird behaves. And, you know, so way back while I was still working at Humber, I had worked out, it was sort of a backfilled thing. So I knew that I wanted Paisley to be a birder, but I also needed her. She had to come up with a plan at a certain point to see if she could save her father and the farm. And then I connected it with the birding. And I thought, okay, so we need a rare bird that is likely on Amherst Island. How am I going to do that? And so my stepmother knew a birder in Northumberland, and I got on the phone with her, and she pitched me some birds. She thought maybe it could be a bald eagle. I got pitched a bunch of birds, and birders are so interesting. I mean, like anybody who's got a passion about something. I got put on to another woman in Prince Edward County, and she got 2 other birders on the line, and there were all 3 of us on the phone, and they started arguing about which bird it should be. And I just listened. I just eavesdropped on the whole argument. And at the very end, they said, well, it could be a Henslow sparrow, because that is definitely in the right area for Amherst Island. But it's really this, you know, it's practically an invisible bird with a nothing song. It looks so ordinary, and yet it's so special. And I was like, there's my bird.
There's your bird.
There's my bird.
I'd never heard of the Henslow sparrow, and I have a little bird book, and I certainly looked it up, and yeah, it's very nondescript, but it's interesting that you sort of, like you said, she's a very special, and it's sort of related to Paisley. So yeah, it's great. And I can tell you, I loved all the bird references, because I'm not a birder, but I have backyard feeders and everything else, and it is fun to see what comes through and pull out the book to look at it. But your descriptions or Paisley's descriptions of the birds are fabulous. Now, one question did come up: is there such a thing as a bird trivia night? Like there's a reference somewhere along
in my book. There is.
Pardon me.
In my book, there is.
There is, yes.
I have
but
no idea.
You have no idea. Okay, we
No,
were just
no.
wondering if that was actually something or not. Is there a
Right.
version of
I
you?
think it sounds like a fine idea, a fine way to sell beer and wings at a pub.
Yeah, yeah.
I will tell you one more thing about the Henslow Sparrow. So we had a launch in Toronto last June, and then we decided we would also have a launch on Amherst Island because that's where the book was set, and we felt like people would be interested. And so Kirk, as you mentioned, my husband is a knitter, and his sort of moniker in the knitting world is the Knitting Pilgrim, and he loves to use yarn that's made on Amherst Island by a farm called Topsy Farms. And so I said to him, the women who were organizing the launch said, would you mind giving us a book as a door prize? And I said, no, not at all. And then I said to Kirk, do you think that you could maybe knit something as a door prize? And so Kirk came up with knitting a Henslow Sparrow pillow. And unfortunately, he's not here. He's in BC visiting our first kid, but I'm going to show you the pillow that he knit. Let me see if you can you see that?
Oh, wow. That is beautiful.
Isn't that lovely?
That is amazing and so realistic to what I've got in my book on the bird book. So
that was the door prize at the launch on Amherst Island, and then
of
he
course
gave it away. And that night we got
too.
into bed, and I said, "You just gave away the only Henslow Sparrow pillow. Now you need to knit me one too." So he did.
There you go. Now, have you seen a Henslow Sparrow?
Oh goodness, no.
No. Okay.
No.
No.
They're very rare and in decline.
Yeah.
But I will say that I think it was last April. So the book was published in June, and last April I got a very excited email from Paul McKenzie, my birding specialist, who said one has been spotted at Pelee Island. And I was excited, but I also said to him, it's still a rare bird, right? Like the book hadn't quite come out yet. And I said, do I have to rewrite and choose a different bird? And he said, no, this is a very rare sighting. So you're safe.
So the fact that Paisley sees one at the end, at the derelict home, her mother's home, what was your intended message to the reader on that?
It's a really good question. I think it was a few different things. I mean, I wanted her to have the exquisite moment of finally seeing this bird. And it feels like it's a symbol of hope, that you can work very, very hard at something and there is a payoff at the end. But also in a way, because she decides to leave the house as it is, that she never, in a sense, she doesn't go back. She continues moving forward, right? So she decides to leave that bird, leave the house in its state so that the bird won't be disturbed. And we have a sense that she hopefully will have a future with Garnet wherever they land, but that she won't be forced to go back into this house that held so many difficult memories for her.
Okay, great. That's great. So now talking about, you got a lot of great characters in this book. I loved Mrs. Asmith, Mrs. Feldman, and certainly Rory was fantastic. I know Garnet, everyone was really mad at Garnet. And the way you described him and how he treated Paisley really got us our temperature boiling, I guess you could say, with anger. At what point was it the beginning while you were writing the book, or did you already know from the beginning that Garnet and Paisley were going to end up together, or at least try to move forward together? Because he was definitely a really nasty young man. And, Paisley, obviously they were attracted to each other, but they repelled each other at the same time. So it's like, at what point did you know that it was going to work out that way? And I know there's some readers said to me they're really surprised that she went for him because of the way he treated her. And can you explain a little bit more about that whole relationship?
It's an important thing to talk about. I think I knew from the very beginning that they would end up together. And his arc in the book is really about redemption. It's really about the fact that we do questionable things when we're teenagers. Not everybody, but some people. And he was an incredibly frustrated, angry teen, and was desperate for a chance at redemption as an adult. So this coincidental intersection with Paisley gives him that chance, and to show that he's not still that person. So some people have said to me, she shouldn't have ended up with him. And I understand that. Like, it's not like I'm trying to say that it's okay to bully somebody and then get rewarded for it in the end. But I felt instead that just that it was important to show that you could be broken and then healed again. For me, the book is so much about that. And so that was Paisley struggled with OCD the worst as a child, and struggled with it much more as an adult than I have. But that she has a chance at a beautiful life, and somebody who will love her just as she is. And that Garnet gets the same chance, even though, he's broken in a different way, and that in a way, the two most broken people in the book can help each other out of the hole.
Well, certainly I loved it when they were leaving the house and he goes in, she wants the stove checked, and he goes, look, I've got this. I'm going to go in and do this. And it was just.
And I will tell you that is my husband, my prince of a husband.
Okay.
That is straight from my life. Because my OCD mixed with like a fire phobia, and so it'd be very hard for me to leave the house and not be afraid that the house would burn down. And after he and I got together, I would especially have trouble when we would go away on vacation and we were going to leave the house for a few days, and I would feel like that, I wasn't on alert, I wasn't watching the house, and bad things could happen. And he was the one who said, I am really going to go inside and I'm really going to check. You can watch me do it. And so he, to this day, he is still the last person out of the house when we go places. And for me, it's a huge relief. And I know that he's really doing it. And it's the most gallant, romantic thing anybody's ever done for me.
There you go. So that was also a personal, the fact you had the fire phobia, and then the counting of eights as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, so when you write about, Paisley and her OCD and the fact that she's doing eights and then has to do it over again and everything's by the eights. I mean, was that what it was like for you as a child? So
yeah, it's a very lonely thing. OCD is such a lonely thing. It doesn't make any sense. And yet, you're trapped in a thought pattern that you can't escape. So, I mean, my experience was that I was born in 1965. So I think, it started to happen around the age of 7. So that would have been the early 70s. And back then there was no internet, and I didn't have any siblings. So there was nobody to kind of catch me doing this. My parents both worked and I was a latchkey kid. And so there was no real way I don't remember celebrities talking about it. Now we have Howie Mandel and some other celebrities who have spoken openly about struggling with it, but there were none of those resources out there. And so for me, it was an incredibly lonely thing. I somehow got through it without medication and really without being found out. And so, yeah, anyway, that's my experience. And it wasn't until, I became like in my mid-20s and I fell in love with my husband. And then I felt like I was strong enough to kind of sort that out. Yeah.
Now, you chose, Paisley, not to take any medication either. And I guess that's because you obviously didn't. But what do you think of the advances with medication these days for people?
I think it's tremendous. I think people need to use the resources that they can. I mean, I had a really amazing experience. I will say that. So I heard that the book was going to be published, and then I said to my husband, I'd better read up on OCD because I actually don't know a lot about it. I only have this intensely personal experience that I kind of went through for 20 years. But once I, kind of pulled myself out of it, there was no need for me to look for a community. Anyway, it was right in the middle of the pandemic. And so many organizations were pivoting online and doing webinars. And I joined a group called the IOCDF, the International OCD Foundation. It's an American foundation, and they were incredible. They offered all these webinars, and it was, and everything, all sorts of resources online. And for me, it was actually surreal to attend those webinars and hear other people. So for the first time, I was essentially in a room, albeit a virtual room, with other people who had the same issue that I had. And I kid you not, word for word, some of the things that they said were the things that I said, were the things that Paisley said. It was shocking to me and very affirming, I guess, that it wasn't just me and my sort of weird brain, that is a definite problem, because here were people from all walks of life in all kinds of different countries saying the same, having the same experience. So, I think if medication can help people, that's awesome.
Yeah, but also a support group, like
A
obviously you've
support
got
group,
people
exactly.
that are suffering in the same way, and the fact that there's, you're not alone, and that's a lot of people with mental health feel they're suffering alone, and it takes courage to reach out. So there we go. So the title, I'm just going to jump around a little bit here, but the title, At Last Count, when did that come to you? I mean, there's so many, she's counting of the birds, and also one it's getting like there's 2.5 weeks before Paisley has to be out of her apartment, and Mrs. Feldman says, you can't count on anybody else, you have to count on yourself.
Right.
And I just was wondering at what point the At Last Count title came to
Yes, during the publishing process. So originally it was called Crazy Eights. Which was what the kids in school had called Paisley, the kind of nasty bullying nickname that they had given her. And Lee Nash said to me, crazy is a word that we're trying not to use anymore in kind of the common vernacular, because it's so loaded. And it relates to mental health, but it's a sort of a derogatory term for people with mental health issues. So I would love not to call the book Crazy Eights. And also let's do a pass of the book where we take out almost all the, like I realized how often I had used that term in the book, people calling Paisley crazy. I think I left it in twice for very particular reasons. Once the landlord calls her crazy.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what the second time was. Anyway, so then was the challenge of trying to find I had lived with that title for so long, I drew a complete blank, and then I wandered around the house for a couple of weeks chopping onions and trying to come up with all manner of titles. So eventually I sent Lee a giant list of 20 titles that it could be, things that resonated on birding or on counting, and At Last Count was the one that we landed on. And she did a quick search, and there was no other novel that was called that, so it was perfect.
Perfect. Well, it's a great, again, I think it's an absolutely fabulous title for the book.
It kind of refers to her going back, right? So there's when we say At Last Count, something happened, we're thinking about something that happened in the past, and so that resonated with the structure of the book and whatnot.
There you go. Okay, I think I've gotten through things, and we talked a little bit about writing about a small community and having summer there. You were able to get, and you had fact checkers and everything else. We talked about the then and now titles. Question about Dell, such a rich character, and Paisley looked up to her because she was courageous, she had style, confidence, charisma, but Dell ultimately lets her down. Why did you have Dell let her down? Like, why did Dell become from being this amazing, strong character to just being such a disappointment for Paisley?
Well, Paisley is our hero, right? I wanted to show that Paisley is the one who's strong enough to get herself out of this situation that she's in. And so it was interesting to me to contrast her with the person at the, when we're kids and we see these adults and they have such a sheen on them and we think that they've got it all figured out. And then we turn into adults ourselves and we're like, actually, I don't have anything figured out and I'm not sure they do either. So Dell seemed like a really good person to use as a foil for Paisley. So that at the end, first of all, she doesn't stay true to, she abandons Paisley, right? Paisley ends up on her own, heading to Toronto, having to take care of herself at a young age. But it just was, it felt strong to have Paisley win at the end. And so to contrast that with Dell's experience of she talked a big talk, but she didn't do the hard work to get out. Whereas Paisley didn't talk a big talk and managed to dig herself out at the end.
Okay, great. And then another character question is Rory. Is there a
Yes.
Rory in your life? Because
No.
No.
No, but I wanted Paisley to have a sort of almost secret friend on Amherst Island, somebody who would not judge her for her OCD, for the, she's essentially a loner for most of her youth. And Rory is and in small communities, word spreads like wildfire and cliques happen and the teens go with the cool guy and Paisley needed somebody. I knew she needed somebody. So I had to pick somebody who was kind of completely innocent of all of those social dynamics. And Rory was the perfect person. And in a way, he has a disability. And so he's an example of a person who takes other people at complete face value and also has, to the extent that he can, has a successful life, right? He's working on a farm. He lives in the island. He is the one who calls the fire in the shed and gets turned into the mayor because of it. And so it felt like, in a way, Rory is also a positive depiction of somebody with a mental health issue.
Okay. And then Mrs. Feldman was almost like a mother figure to Paisley. Again, was there a Mrs. Feldman in your life, or?
Yes.
I don't know. And I mean, you don't have to divulge this. I don't know if you had a relationship with your mother,
Yeah, no, Mrs. Feldman is actually based on my good friend Dolly Reisman, who's a wonderful writer and was one of the two women who started my writer's circle together way back when in 2005. And so I could hear Mrs. Feldman's voice, but she's older than my friend Dolly, but she has the same kind of lilt and rhythm. And Dolly is very good at bossing me when I need to be bossed. So yeah, Mrs. Feldman is my friend Dolly.
Here you go. Okay.
I think she knows that. I hope she knows that. Now she's going to find out.
There you go. Now there were two hymns you referred to in the book. How did you choose those?
Those are my favorite hymns.
They are. You're absolutely.
Yep.
Can you?
I just went with my favorites.
Favorite hymns, like what's the connection that makes them your favorite hymns? So. Well,
yeah, I mean, they're just excellent. They're excellent hymns. And I married a PK, a preacher's kid. My husband is the product of 3 generations of Presbyterian ministers, and his father, Xander Dunn, was Amherst Island was Xander's first charge out of theological school in the 60s, and that's why Kirk was born there. And then they went back in the 2000s to live there again. They ostensibly to retire, but then he came out of retirement to be the minister again at St. Paul's. So I've done. I am officially Anglican, but was never practicing until I married a preacher's kid. And so I have gone to more church than I ever thought was going to be in my life, I have to say. And those are the 2 hymns that I just adore.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, that sort of comes to the only, unless you feel like answering writing for screen versus writing novels, the difference in it, because we didn't really touch on that. If you feel like answering that,
sure. We're
getting close to our 8 o'clock time frame, but
I can answer that in 30 seconds.
Okay.
They are writing for screen and writing for books are very much the same and wildly different, is what I would say. The process of publishing this book, especially with Invisible, who are, oh, I just can't say good enough things about them. There's just a wonderful publisher. But it has been so fulfilling for me. And as I said, right at the beginning, the act of publishing a book is so long and it's so many words and so many drafts. But it has been such an antidote to the stress of television, which I have lived with for a very long time, that I don't have a single negative thing to say about publishing a book. It was just a delight from start to finish.
No pressure. Are we thinking of writing another novel? And if
Oh,
so,
yes.
do we have an idea of what that novel might be? Yes. Okay, good.
Yes, I am 2 chapters away from finishing the first draft of my next book.
Fantastic. And are you taking on big topics? Like you
No,
because this one you've taken on so many amazing big topics. So I was just wondering, there's other big topics.
This one is very frothy.
Oh,
it's very, it is a romance too. So, you can look at last count through the lens of romance. But this one is a frothy romance.
All right. Very exciting. Is it going to be with Invisible, or are you going to?
I don't know. I don't know yet. I have to get a few drafts under my belt before I send it out.
And I bet the Bird editor is not going to be editing this one, right?
That's right. Oh, I don't know. You never know. You never know. He was wonderful and had many gifts other than being a junior ornithologist.
There you go. Okay. And if there's one thing we're to take away from this book, what do you want us to take away? Is there something we should do if we meet someone who's got OCD? Is there a tip that, what would you like us to take away? If there's one thing to take away from this book?
That's a great question. I think that you don't, the main message for me in the book is that you don't have to believe everything your brain tells you. And I think that that's true for someone like me who has struggled with OCD, but I think it's true for everyone, that there's a lot of hope out there, and that we can, that sometimes thoughts and feelings are just that, they're not facts.
Well, that's a perfect ending. Well, Claire, thank you very, very much. I really appreciate all your time and taking this hour with us. It's just been absolutely enlightening, and it just makes even the book even more special. And I can't wait to reread it. So having got your input into the whole thing and your perspectives on everything, it's a fabulous book. So congratulations again.
Thank you so much.
On that. So I know I'm going to be passing the floor over back to Maya, and she's going to do a little blessing and thank you, but did want to just let everybody know that our next Islington Reads is on June 20th, Tuesday, June 20th. And we are going to be discussing My Indian Summer, and it's by Joseph Kakanwakansum. I'm not sure I've got that pronounced correctly, but we will get the right pronunciation when he joins us on the 20th. And again, it is sort of a bit of an autobiographical story about one summer he was left alone to sort of raise himself when he was a teenager. And his mother deals with drug issues, and his brother comes back and forth from fighting fires and is not very nice to him, and his sister has fled. So he really is raising himself this one summer, and it is an absolutely fantastic read. And I know we'll have a great discussion with Joseph on June 20th. So please mark your calendars for that one. And again, so Claire, thank you. And now I will pass it over to you, Maya.
Friends, aren't we grateful for this? I just want to say well, Claire, first, we want to honor what a neat love story that you've shared with us about Kirk too. Some of us from our neighborhood have seen his work, and so it's just amazing to see how the creativity of people and a little glimpse into love that carries us in the hardest of times. I want to really give thanks for your work, it is no coincidence that it came to us in the season of Easter. And so when we talk about redemption, and people having a new chance at life. That really, we found that in your own personal story tonight, but also in the gift of knowing Paisley and watching just a glimpse of this story. So continue to write from the place, from your experience and from the place of wisdom that we've experienced tonight. And we just bless your new novel. We look forward to it, and we've been grateful for your honesty and just the privilege to hold this, and for all of us to be reminded that something can be shelved for a while, and that in the time that it is supposed to come in the world, into the world, creatively, it will be birthed. And that for us, all of us, is hope. So bless you into that. And that seems fitting as Sarah's looking at a new chapter for her and the novel Spot, that blessing spills over, Claire, from you onto Sarah. She chose this book for us. She doesn't choose by coincidence. It really is one of her gifts. And so, Sarah, we just want to give thanks for the way you've supported and cared for authors, and the way that this next chapter will be written for you. We are cheering both of you on, and look forward to what will be next for all of us. So into the night, all of you be blessed. And those who want to stay around and chat about Claire's book, you're more than welcome to stay with me and do that. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Claire. It was great.
Oh, and the
Thank
chat's open if people want to put things in, words of gratitude.
Claire, I have one question. I have a cousin that had OCD, has OCD, and I'm not sure that it started really early in childhood, but certainly in her teen years and as an adult. Were you troubled by kids at school when you had it?
That's a great question.
Were you bullied?
No, I was bullied. I was bullied for other reasons.
Oh.
I was a very overweight kid, and it was the anxiety spilling over into food. But I was a very good secret keeper, so nobody knew that I had OCD. Not my parents, or I think by the time the book was coming out, only kind of 4 or 5 people knew. But yeah, I was bullied because I was fat. And so I have a pretty good insight into what that feels like. But I do feel like, I have to say, I have 2 20-somethings for children. And what I so appreciate about their generation is they talk about mental health like they talk about physical health. So they will say out loud, I need a mental health day, or I don't feel well now. I need to take a break. And they have much more language about taking care of themselves than we ever did in the 70s and 80s. So, my hope for people who struggle with these things is to be able to talk about it in a way that doesn't ostracize. They don't get ostracized, that it's just another thing that we're dealing with, and that there are coping mechanisms, and that they can access those.
Thank you.
I have one question, and maybe it was answered and I missed it. Why was she called Paisley?
Oh, I know it wasn't asked. I don't know, actually.
Okay.
I can't remember. I think I met somebody whose name was Paisley, and I just thought it was such a lovely name.
Okay. Thank you. I just was seeing this wonderful swirl, this Turkish
Yes,
swirl.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
All right, well, I'm going to head out now. So thank you again, Claire, for a lovely evening.
Thank you, Sarah.
And hopefully you'll stop by the new bookshop, wherever that may be. So
Oh,
we'd love to
yes, I
have you
look forward
stop
to
by
it.
when that happens. So
Okay.
When
Yes,
are you
please.
closing, Sarah?
Saturday, this coming Saturday is my last day.
So if
So
we want.
that's my
this-
last day for in-store browsing. I am going to be in and out in the month of May. So if anyone's got orders, they can come pick up. We'll just coordinate a time for me to hand the books out the door in the month of May. And then I'm going online and local delivery, kind of like what we did during the pandemic. So it'll be back to that until I find a new place to hang my shingle. So
we can buy the books from you though.
absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. So you can phone in my phone number. I'm moving everything into my basement for the transition period. So phone number is coming with me. So you can phone me or you can put in the online orders. And when I have any news as to the new location, it will be in my newsletter, on the website, on the phone message, everything. We'll make sure everybody knows where they can find me for books.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyway, take care, everybody. And thank you again, Claire, for a lovely evening. And we'll see everybody
Thank you
again
for having
soon.
me.
Bye,
Okay.
Sarah.
Bye.